Everything's changing in PR these days, so now what? In a world where every post, podcast, and platform claims to be news, how do brands build real credibility? This week we're talking about the state of trust in media and how thoughtful earned storytelling still wins over algorithms every time. I know we're talking about trust today.
We
And
are
just for the record, I trust you.
good. The feeling's mutual.
Yeah.
Or the trust is mutual.
Exactly. Well, but that's because we've worked together for a long time. So we've had the opportunity to build an actual relationship. And I know that I can count on you to come through and mean what you say and be honest with me. But in the game of PR, that's not always the case.
And it's a hot topic right now, right? Because VaynerMedia, Muckrack, and Epsis just released a report looking at this very topic and kind of scrutinizing the trust or the eroding of trust in the media landscape these days. And it's incredibly fitting. Obviously, nothing was terribly earth-shattering with the report, but what it really did was get us talking even more about kind of what we knew was already happening in media and in the news cycle. So, today we're just going to kind of dig into, how that plays into our roles as communicators, because it does create a challenge for us. And, how do we advise our clients and the tech companies that they work for on building trust in a time where that trust is really eroding? What's your take on the state of trust in the media right now?
Trust, just the word, is everywhere. I think I commented about it on LinkedIn the other day when I was sharing a link to Jimmy Wales' interview in the New York Times over the weekend, where he was talking about the function of Wikipedia and the value of real discourse and the desire to seek knowledge. There was also in my Derek Thompson Substack this morning, he was talking about even being able to trust a chart with some data because you found it on the internet. Saying it as a joke, but really it's in the back of everyone's mind. It's like, well, if it's on the internet, it must not be true. And yet, this is the place where everyone is going for most of their information these days. So in a professional context, just being aware of that being an acknowledged truth among most of the people that I know, it sets up this paradox. How are you supposed to gain trust and build trust as a professional communicator when you know that as a human consumer, your first inclination is not to trust these days? The context is important, and really a lot of it has to do with just the amount of information that we have coming at us and the difficulty in distinguishing what is a credible or reliable source and the contexts in which we consume information and exchange it with each other. In a way, you'd kind of just have to step back from the fire hose that is always aimed at everyone's face and really ground yourself in your North Star for whatever it is you're trying to communicate.
That makes a lot of sense. And I want to build on that because when we talk about this in the context of B2B communications, where these big decisions really hinge on the expertise and long-term relationships, what should clients like ours be focused on right now?
Really, a lot of what our clients need us for is to set the temperature for their communications efforts, because depending on what venues you're participating in media-wise, it colors your emotional perception of reality. You cannot help but be impacted by the information that you consume and the way in which it's presented to you. So for business, where you need steady, thoughtful, measured interaction, because these are decisions that are going to affect not only you and your goals for your organization, but everybody who works with you, everybody who partners with you, the field that you're participating in, the science that you're promoting. Those things are important. There's a measure of responsibility for not just your own desires, but for the good of the ecosystem. And I don't think that's a woo-woo concept, that why it's important to approach communication with a level of integrity that is consistent and is founded in truth. You start there and let that be the guiding principle for everything that you participate in. And that doesn't mean that you always have to have a very official voice and that you're not allowed to say, hey, I like hot chocolate too, or something personal. In fact, being authentically human, even though the word authenticity is kind of diluted these days, but that really still has the most power in communications.
I totally agree with that. The concept of responsibility is something we've been talking about a lot, especially in the last few weeks, where we've been talking about kuleana, which is the Hawaiian word. One of the meanings of that is responsibility, and really taking that to heart and owning how we communicate and how we show up. And as client counsel, for comms programs. This is one of the things that we're working on our clients with, and how we show up. So I couldn't agree with you more on that idea of responsibility being so key for us. The report and the webinar that we both attended talked about the media landscape in a generality, and that's something I want to dig in with you a little bit, because the media landscape right now is enormous. Anyone can start a podcast or launch a Substack and call it news. So when everyone's a publisher, where does the trust building actually happen? How do we as communicators really help our clients validate sources and decide which voices are credible enough to align with versus just being the loudest?
Earlier this year, like Pew did a fairly intensive study on what people consider news. And it did show that there is a great deal more subjectivity attached to the concept, people. Everyone can agree that, like, a war happening somewhere is newsworthy, but not everyone agrees that the sports scores are newsworthy. They're saying that your level of interest, your level of agreement with whoever is delivering the information, these things really do impact what people consider news, probably more now than ever before, simply because there's so much choice in where you get that. Like you say, everyone's a publisher, and this gets filtered into the concept of news beyond just weather. I'm remembering another study that said the Weather Channel was the most trusted news source.
Yes.
In the world right now, and I can understand why. If it's raining, we can all agree that it's raining because you're feeling it,
So right.
you're experiencing it. There's a lot of things that come along with our sources of information these days. And that's a good thing. Some people say, oh, it's been democratized from institutions. Yes, but at the same time, it's been democratized. It's also been flooded with sludge. You can't talk about trust these days without mentioning AI, because that is one of the major problems with the mass rollout of this very impressive technology that may be very helpful eventually, or it's already pretty helpful in some contexts. But one of those, fatal flaws is that it is not consistently trustworthy in the sense of, like, using one of the GPTs for summarizing something for you. We also have to remember, this is another thing, is the good old days were neither. It's always been hard to determine who to trust. Just because you had fewer sources of information in 1950 doesn't mean that all that information was necessarily better, less biased, more transparent, better researched. Spin has existed since people started interacting with each other. So
And writing it down and sharing it.
And writing it down and spreading it out to other people.
Well, you bring up a really good point about the legacy media, because the report talked about trust being higher with the legacy outlets. And yet, as consumers, we're getting most of our news through our social feeds. So
right.
I'm really trying to reconcile, like, okay, if local news and the legacy platforms, the ABC, NBC, Fox, are typically what people trust the most, according to this recent study, and yet we're getting most of that news through our feeds, and it's not usually the source, right? I mean, if you're only following those legacy media on social, which, tell me how you're doing that, if that is even possible, then you're getting that news filtered yet again, maybe several times, run through AI, reshared, turned into opinions. Like, it's so much to sort through. So it's remarkable to me that the trust lies somewhere else, but the feed is coming from that noise that is often social.
Yeah, and that's just simply because we spend so much time on our devices and they're designed to be addictive and everybody knows it and yet we do it anyway. You know, that people say, "Oh, we're getting all our news, I get all my news from social." Well, that might be where you see what's
Right.
trending. There's a difference between reading a headline
Yeah.
and consuming news. And so when we talk about, I hate to say legacy. Why don't we
Yeah.
say validated
Sure.
news sources? Which, and even that, there's difficulty around the language in it. But the truth of the matter is, for business, for B2B PR and communications, there is value in participating in social media, but there, as far as building trust and building credibility, it's still way more valuable to be interviewed by Christopher Mims, or to be the subject of a feature in the New York Times or Bloomberg, because they are fact checked. They do have professional constraints. It's the third party validation. But, just like in a day to day, like how do we do good best practice communications? You start from a place of integrity. You want to be trusted? Don't lie.
Yeah.
Keep your commitments. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you make a mistake, own up to it and be transparent about it. Come from a place of genuine curiosity and fair play. Don't game people. Don't do the bait and switch. Don't change your messaging every 2 seconds, depending on which way the wind is blowing. Be real.
Yeah.
And stick to that and stay the course. It's like, it ain't broke. Don't fix it.
Yeah. And know too that credibility takes time to build. This is not an overnight thing. Credibility doesn't come about because of a press release that you put out or a blog series that you might do. And that real credibility and relationship building with those third parties that really help to validate your expertise or help to build trust with your brand really comes with the background work, the leg work, the being out there, sharing your expertise, being, a reliable source of information in your space or on your brand, and showing up with that real authenticity. And I know that word is used too much in what we're talking about, but that consistency, the authenticity, listen to what's going on and respond appropriately is what really builds the credibility.
If you want to build relationships, you actually have to talk to people. That translates on a professional level in giving information to people, offering to sit for interviews with journalists, posting your strategy or your insights on your company's blog post, providing white papers on how your technology works, and being willing to talk to people who have questions about that. Going to conferences, appearing on podcasts so that people can ask you, well, gee, what does that really mean? Know that there are many different venues to do that. And it's okay to have professionals advise you on which venues are appropriate to communicate that in which contexts.
When we think about where people are getting their news and so much of it's coming from social, but in the business community, I mean, there's really one platform that most of us should be paying attention to and engaging and networking on, and that's LinkedIn. And in between earned media and that validity that comes from the earned media, there's the showing up in the conversation in all the other ways, whether it's on LinkedIn, majority of the time, because there isn't always a conference you're going to be going to or, networking events. So coupling the two is incredibly important. It's part of that building component, building the credibility. It's a confluence of all of these things coming together where there's a purpose and an intent and a goal behind everything that you're doing and how you're showing up and how you're engaging. That is really important. But definitely prioritizing the earned media these days is probably the number one thing we're telling clients. And that hasn't changed. That is probably, that's always been our position, but it's more important now than ever given the media landscape that has grown and becomes, just inundated with news or opinions.
There's a process involved of introducing yourself, participating in conversations, discussing, being being willing to discuss what it is that you're offering to the world. And then as you build customers or partners or whatever, delivering on what you say that you're going to provide. All of that is a building process. And then maybe once you've impressed enough people and word starts getting around, then we go to the New York Times and say, hey, you really do need to talk to these new wizards in Silicon Valley who are changing everything.